Hello. Well, today I wanted to discuss about it's like two different things, but it maybe kind of go together. And so the first one is the differences of accents or regional accents. And the second one is drift. So they kind of go hand in hand, but they are a little bit different. Now, regional signs or accents, and in sign, see, this is a voice where you have your voice and it's an accent. Like if you have a foreign accent, or you could have a sign accent, which would be on the hand. They have an accent. They're from New York, or New York or whatever, or California. And so even where I live, there are difference, a little bit of differences. And some you can kind of, exactly, you see that. For example, when Zoom came about, during COVID, we first started where I was living, we would spell it Zoom, a Zoom meeting. And then later, it was like because it had the little pictures of the people who were on the meeting. So you could do picture, picture, picture. You could either do this, hold it, or because this is the first row, or you could do it this way. And then I moved, and here's Zoom. So here's the pictures, right? And then, or you could even do it like this because you've got that. It's a little square, and then do this and a Z. You're not really doing a Z, or you could even do this Z. You're doing a Z shape in the air, but you're not really doing a Z per se. You're doing all the little pictures, right? Zoom. And I like that, and that is a regional sign accent because I didn't see it where I was living before. So that is an example. Also there's different ones, and I was talking about this before, you may use specifically for that person or for that classroom or that, particular event, and you maybe not use it later. That's not really a regional accent. Another example of a regional accent is black sign language. And that started when the schools were segregated and the deaf were segregated as well. So I remember when I first moved to this one area, and this woman was using this sign, and I thought, what does that mean? Right? I had no idea. But I found out it was laugh, laugh. And it is the bottom lip where it shakes up and down. And that was black sign language. And she got that from her parents that went to the deaf school in the Deep South. That was a segregated school. Because you can do laugh, you can do laugh, you can do laugh, those kinds of things. But I had not seen that before, and it's a regional sign, or it's black sign language. It was regional, but it's really a black sign language wherever the black schools, black segregated deaf schools were. And so there's you're going to see something, or sometimes you're going, oh, I use this sign for that, and someone else uses a sign for that. For example, I've done this before as well, like for temperature. Temperature is the thermometer. And so you have your one hand shape on your non-dominant hand, and the other one goes up and down because of the mercury in a thermometer. So if you just do month, that's month, right? But this is like a temperature because it goes up and down. However, I've also seen it, checking when your mom would check when you were little, would check your cheek or your forehead, that would be a temperature. Also, I think I have a fever. So some people do an F hand shape for fever on the thermometer as well to say that they have a fever. But I've also seen this. So those are regional differences or regional accents. So you're going to see them all over the U.S. I had another friend of mine who is an interpreter for VRI, virtual reality interpreter, that says because they're interpreting from the East Coast to the West Coast, North to South, Midwest, that some of the signs are becoming more standardized. Will that ever? I'm not sure, because it's just a mixture and it's how you use the language. And it could be from a gesture. I'm trying to think of examples, but because I don't see a lot of variety right now, I mean, there is some, but not a lot. Now, let's go to drift. And you're thinking, what is sign language drift? And that is when you start out with a sign and it becomes something else where you don't understand it. And you're going, isn't that original? No, not necessarily. And this example came to me very clear as I thought about it all night long, that I had a drift on a particular sign. Now, years ago when I first started, there was the word myth, M-Y-T-H. Now, it depends on, you can read the dictionary definition and sometimes it's your own personal definition. But we ended up signing it with an M on our hand like this. Now, you can say, oh, is it like a theory or is it thinking? But really, myth means, it could either say a false story or imaginary. So I think it started from imaginary, myth, right? An M, myth, imaginary. And I ended up doing like this. And I think where I was living at that time, that's how we were signing it in that English class. Because that's where the myth, and then if you do some world history, you do mythology. That's a different sign, which is kind of fun. But I realized I was doing some sign language drift because I don't use that sign very much. And the last time I signed it in a class, we ended up doing this. And it was probably from imaginary. This is imagination, imaginary. Or you could even do made up. So I've seen several regional signs for myth. So one is a false story. The second one is a made up story. And then the one I was using, it initially started as imaginary, but with an M, imaginary, and we ended up doing this. That's drift. So it could be imaginary, myth, or, but like I said, that's a drift. So you be careful, and that's when we get lazy and we don't have anybody else to kind of correct us, or like, no, that's a sign, we get into a drift. Or the fourth one is to just spell it. And I think that's a safe way, isn't it? And here's a fun way from mythology. It's like a ball in the sense that you're holding, and then you go and you kind of like turn it around. I think that's a fun sign, but how often would you use mythology unless you're studying that in a particular class? So for a short time you could kind of use that. So that's kind of a fun sign. But most people would not know that sign. So be careful. And I say the drift happens when you become a little bit on the lazy side, or and you're just kind of lazy with your signs, or you don't have a team that kind of gives you that feedback to let you know, oh, wrong, right? So we're all guilty of that, but I really enjoy learning all the different signs and how you can use it. But sometimes you get into a specific way that you like to sign something, and that's okay. And that is an accent. If the sign is correct and the meaning is correct, then you're fine, right? That is an accent. So that's your preferred accent. But you want to make sure that that sign is associated with the people that you are signing with, right? Your friends, your deaf friends at church, or at school, or whoever that you meet. And if they sign something different, they'll say, oh, what does that mean? And you explain, and they go, oh, and then they'll show a sign, and you're going, oh, cool, I can use something different. So now I have two ways of signing that same concept. So some of the signs don't change, and then some have like, a regional sign. So kind of watch out for that and see what you pick up in the different, areas. Or they'll say, how else do you sign that? And there are different ways. And so it just depends on where that person is from. Are they from the West in the West, all the way to the West Coast? Are they from the East? Are they from the South? Or the Midwest? So just practice, watch, learn, and enjoy. I'll see you later. Bye.